Chosen one, this message has found you at the perfect moment. There are no accidents, no coincidences. In the silent hours you wondered if anyone saw your tears, felt the weight of your pain, or recognized the fire stirring in your soul. You've carried burdens in secret, battled shadows that no one else could see, and yet every unseen sacrifice has prepared you for a destiny they never saw coming. Tonight, hidden truths will burst into the light, revealing power you thought lost and a calling that was written before time began. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will shatter every limitation holding you back. Marked and set apart, they have often felt like strangers in a familiar world, walking streets that brimmed with life even as their own soul felt solitary. Every step seemed guided by an unseen hand pulling them away from the crowd, leading them along paths that twisted into hidden valleys of purpose. In boardrooms and break rooms, they sensed a mission beyond the mundane tasks at hand, a calling that stirred their spirit even as office lights and laughter echoed around them. They carried burdens of purpose too heavy for casual conversation, the whisper of destiny in their ear that no one else could hear. In those moments of isolation, they questioned whether their life had meaning or if the weariness was simply a defect in their design. Yet in the depths of that solitude lay the seed of divine formation, proof that they were neither lost nor forgotten, but tenderly crafted for a destiny that required secret preparation. They remember the sting of every door that slammed in their face when they dared to share glimpses of their vision. They recall the offhand remarks that undercut their confidence, suggestions they were foolish for chasing dreams no one else could see or understand. They felt the awkwardness of standing alone in social gatherings, where laughs and camaraderie flowed freely among others while they stood on the edge of belonging, drawn inward by the gravity of their unseen mandate. Each time a relationship faltered because they refused to compromise their convictions, they nursed wounds deeper than any visible scar. They wrestled with confusion, wondering if their dedication to a cause only they could feel was an act of faith or folly. Yet those ugly questions were the very chisels carving out unshakable character, sculpting resilience in the bone against every assault of doubt. Then, like a quiet flame breaking the night, they encountered a promise that forever changed their perspective. In the often overlooked promise of Isaiah 49 verse 2, "He made my mouth like a sharpened sword, delivered them in the shadow of his hand." They discovered that their hidden journey was not to diminish them, but to hone them. The solitude was not a sentence of abandonment, but an anointment of singular importance, to prepare the sword of their voice for battles that would demand precision and clarity. They saw that each rejection was not a personal failure, but a divine filtration, setting aside every fragmentation of false identity until only the true, unbreakable spirit remained. Every moment spent in quiet study, prayer, or reflection was sharpening them for the day they would speak with the authority of heaven. As this revelation settled in their bones, they began to notice subtle shifts in their everyday life. They woke with a newfound clarity in their thoughts, visions for breakthrough dancing in their mind's eye. Tasks they once approached with dread now felt like steps in a sacred rehearsal. Doors previously invisible creaked open, and they found themselves invited into conversations and projects that resonated with that inner call. They discovered mentors who recognized the spark within them, a spark that no longer flickered with doubt but blazed with certainty. Even mundane routines bore new significance, each chore in their schedule a brick in the foundation of their divine assignment. These signs of transformation were the first light of dawn for a soul long trained in darkness. Behind these outward changes, unseen forces orchestrated every detail to align with their emergence. Synchronicities multiplied. The right book appeared at the right time. An unexpected message in the quiet hours confirmed their next step. And encouragement arrived precisely when discouragement threatened to overwhelm. In the lesser-known assurance of Zephaniah 3 verse 17, "He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing." They felt the melody of heaven rising in their spirit, turning every silent struggle into a triumphant prelude. Their separation had been a setup for service, each lonely hour a strategic deposit of faith that would pay dividends in impact. They began to comprehend that their hidden life was not a liability but the secret vault protecting treasures that could transform entire communities. At this point, understanding that transformation is underway is not enough. They must choose to fully accept and embody the identity of one marked and set apart. Many recoil at this moment, fearful that stepping into such distinction will require sacrifices they cannot fathom. They wonder if the crown of purpose will come with chains of responsibility too heavy to bear. Yet true alignment demands more than acknowledgement of signs. It requires an embrace of destiny with open arms. In Romans 12 verse 2 it is written, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." This is their sacred invitation to reject the patterns of the crowd and renew their thoughts until every belief aligns with the truth that they are uniquely chosen for this hour. Now empowered by every sign and spiritual alignment, they stand ready to step into their new reality. Release the fear that whispers of unworthiness and the doubt that questions their readiness. Declare, "I am set apart. I carry the design of heaven." Anchor themselves in daily rituals that reinforce this identity. Sacred silence before dawn, declarations of purpose in writing, gathering with kindred spirits to refine vision and amplify faith. Let every decision, from the projects they pursue to the relationships they cultivate, reflect the truth of their set-apart calling. In doing so, they transform ordinary moments into sacred milestones, building a life that manifests the divine blueprint within their soul. Comment set apart if you recognize the weight and wonder of your divine design in solitude. The world may not understand your journey yet, but it is waking up to the force you are becoming. Go forth now, beloved, and embrace the power that comes from being marked and set apart. Your destiny awaits its glorious unveiling. And a special thanks to our current members whose faith ignites these revelations. And if you feel called to go even deeper, there's a sacred space reserved for our community, a private room where you receive full prophetic messages daily. Join our private membership through the link in the description and walk this path with us. You loved like Christ. They have found themselves standing in the wreckage of relationships others deemed irreparable, tending to wounds that bled betrayal. In those moments when retaliation felt like the only just response, they chose compassion instead, embodying a love that refused to bow to bitterness. They opened their hearts when every instinct screamed to close them, lending forgiveness to those who had offered only cruelty. Their mercy was not born of weakness but of a fierce resolve to reflect a higher love, one that flowed from a source they could not see but had come to trust. Even as they nursed their own scars by moonlight, they poured healing into broken souls, tethering themselves to a grace that transcended every human slight. They learned that true power lies not in the sword but in the willingness to love unconditionally. They recall nights when tears stained their pillows, not only for their own pain but for the weight of others' suffering. They felt the sting of slander, the hollow ache of promises broken, and the quiet desperation that arises when trust fractures. They wondered if their kindness would ever be repaid or if their compassion would simply be another footnote in someone else's story. At work, when they extended help to a colleague who later claimed credit for their insight, they bore the humiliation with a steady smile. In families torn by division, they were the ones offering an olive branch, even as they felt the loneliness of standing alone in a room of whispers and pointed fingers. Each act of grace came at a personal cost, yet they pressed on, because in their heart burned the conviction that love, when given without agenda, carries its own reward. Then came the turning point, the realization that their sacrificial love was not merely a response to others' pain but a calling, etched into their spirit by divine design. In the lesser-known whisper of Zechariah 9 verse 9, "He has executed judgment and righteousness in the land. His name will be called, the Lord is our righteousness." They discovered that every merciful act linked them to a legacy of justice tempered by compassion. They understood that Christ's love was not passive sentiment but a force that delivered freedom, reshaped destinies, and rewrote narratives of shame into songs of redemption. In that moment, their own suffering transcended personal sorrow, becoming the soil from which a ministry of mercy could grow. They embraced the truth that their heartbreak was not a detour but the pathway to a love that heals nations. As they aligned with this revelation, they began to notice subtle signs of transformation. Their voice, once trembling with uncertainty, gained a resonance that carried hope into desolate places. Strangers reached out with gratitude for words spoken in seemingly ordinary conversations, words that carried the echo of divine grace. Relationships once marred by resentment began to thaw, as hearts that had known only anger opened to gentle overtures of understanding. Invitations to speak at community gatherings arrived without solicitation, as if their message of mercy had been whispered ahead to those in need of healing. Even their daily prayers changed tone, shifting from petitions for personal relief to declarations of blessing over those who had wronged them. Each sign was a breadcrumb on the path of a love that would not be confined by past wounds. Behind these outward changes, higher forces were at work, orchestrating divine alignments to magnify the impact of their compassion. Synchronicities unfolded, encounters with people marked by the very pain they had endured, moments when a timely word unlocked chains of bitterness in another's heart. In the promise of Matthew 5 verse 7, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." They felt the rhythm of reciprocity that transcended human systems of reward. Their willingness to forgive unleashed currents of grace that returned to them in unexpected ways. New doors of opportunity swung open, relationships healed, and even their own inner resolve was fortified by the kindness they had sown. These interventions confirmed that every act of mercy, no matter how small, participates in an economy of love that the universe cannot ignore. At this pivotal juncture, recognizing these signs demands full acceptance of their identity as bearers of divine compassion. Many recoil here, fearful that embracing such a calling will expose them to further hurt or rob them of self-protection. They wonder if they must become doormats, if their boundaries will be sacrificed at the altar of goodwill. Yet true alignment calls for a bold affirmation: "I am a vessel of mercy, and my willingness to love is strength, not weakness." In 2 Corinthians 6 verse 16 it is proclaimed, "I will dwell in them and walk among them," signifying that divine presence accompanies every act of compassion. This is their sacred invitation to step into the fullness of a love that transforms wounds into wells of grace and sorrow into springs of renewal. Now empowered by every sign and spiritual alignment, they stand ready to live out their calling with intentionality. Release the fear that whispers, "What if I'm used again?" and the doubt that questions, "Am I enough to love this deeply?" Instead, declare, "My compassion is not contingent on outcomes. It is an echo of divine love working through me." Anchor themselves in daily disciplines that reinforce this identity. Begin each day with intercessory prayers for others, journal reflections on acts of kindness received and given, and seek out opportunities to serve those on the fringes of society. Surround themselves with fellow travelers who understand the cost and the blessing of mercy, forging alliances that multiply their impact. In doing so, they ensure that every step they take resonates with the power of love unleashed. Comment mercy if you recognize that your love has been your greatest strength and the catalyst for transformation. Go forth now, beloved, and let your Christ-like compassion become the shockwave that dismantles walls of hatred and ushers in a reign of healing. Your greatest battles were won not with sword and shield, but with the open heart that refuses to surrender to darkness. And to every soul who's supported with a super thanks, thank you. You are keeping this light alive for others who haven't found it yet. If you feel called to help this mission reach more chosen ones, tap the super thanks button below. Your energy supports these messages and helps them travel further. Your voice matters, your belief matters, and your light is felt here. You fought like David. They have stared down giants in the shadows, battles that no one else could see. When fear whispered that they were outmatched, they chose faith over fear, lifting their eyes beyond the towering threat to the promise that stood behind them. They understood that true victory does not come from strength of arm, but from the power that flows through a heart aligned with heaven. In those private moments before dawn, they knelt in the quiet and loaded their slingshot with stones of hope plucked from the bedrock of Scripture. They reminded themselves that the same hand that calmed the seas and parted the waters would steady their aim and guide every shot. They remember evenings when the weight of their calling pressed so heavily on their shoulders that every prayer felt like climbing a mountain. They wrestled with doubts that summoned images of failure, each setback a Goliath blocking their path. They felt the sting of mockery when their confidence in unseen victory drew derision from skeptics who demanded tangible proof. At work, they spoke up with conviction and were met with dismissive glances. In friendships, they extended support only to be undervalued. Those moments of rejection cut deeper than any sword, and yet they refused to let wounded pride become a barrier to obedience. Each bruised ego was a stepping stone in training for the battles their destiny required, forging humility beneath the weight of divine purpose. Then came the turning point, when they discovered their struggle was not a detour but a divine crucible. In the lesser-known affirmation of 2 Chronicles 20 verse 15, "Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the battle is not yours but God's." They realized their role was not to wield ultimate power but to stand firm in trust. Their simple obedience in prayer, their willingness to confront fear with a whisper of faith, became the catalyst for miracles too great for human calculation. They understood that David's story was not merely an ancient legend but a living blueprint. The smallest act of faith, when offered to God, can topple the largest obstacle. In that revelation, their perspective shifted, from striving by might to surrendering to authority beyond comprehension. Signs of transformation began to ripple through their life. They noticed that prayers once met with silence now stirred answers. Doors opened at unexpected moments, allies appeared in unlikely places, and solutions to long-standing dilemmas unfolded as if the universe had been rearranged on their behalf. Their courage deepened. Decisions that once caused paralysis now felt like natural steps forward. They experienced a clarity of purpose that dissolved the haze of doubt, replaced by the conviction of someone who had faced down Goliaths and lived to tell the tale. Even their dreams carried prophetic whispers of victory, affirming that the battle was moving from their hands into the hands of heaven. Behind these outward shifts, spiritual forces orchestrated every element to elevate them from hidden struggles to visible triumphs. Synchronicities wove a tapestry of support. Books that addressed exactly their need fell off shelves. Mentors appeared in a single conversation, and creative ideas flowed with supernatural ease. In the promise of Psalm 20 verse 7, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God." They felt the surge of divine alignment, confirming that every giant they confronted had already been defeated on an unseen battlefield. This confirmation dissolved every remaining ember of self-reliance, leaving only the pure flame of faith to drive their destiny. At this pivotal moment, they must choose to fully accept and embody the identity of one who fights like David. Many hesitate here, fearing that declaring themselves warriors of faith will label them targets for fresh attacks. They worry that stepping boldly into divine purpose will expose them to new giants they cannot yet conquer. Yet true alignment demands more than overcoming external obstacles. It requires an inner decree: "I am David's descendant, armed with faith, and I will face every giant with the slingshot of my trust in God." In the quiet echo of Hebrews 11 verse 34, "Quench the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword." They hear the call to join the ranks of heroes who overcame by faith, not by the world's standards but by a power that transcends flesh and blood. Now empowered by every sign and spiritual alignment, they stand ready to step into their future battles with confidence. Release the fear that whispers, "I can't," and the doubt that questions, "What if I fail?" Declare instead, "My faith is my weapon, and with it I conquer the impossible." Anchor themselves in daily disciplines that reinforce this victorious identity. Morning declarations of faith, midday rehearsals of victory in prayer, evening reflections on giant-sized breakthroughs. Surround themselves with kindred spirits who understand the cost and the conquest of spiritual warfare, forging alliances that magnify their impact. In doing so, they transform every challenge into a platform, every confrontation into testimony. Comment victory if your faith has slain giants and you stand ready for the next battle. The world may see only the slingshot, but you wield the force of heaven. Go forth now, chosen warrior. Your throne is reserved, your crown awaits, and your legacy is forged in the fires of unwavering faith. The rise of the King. They have walked through shadows long enough to know that true strength is forged not in light but in the crucible of suffering. Now, as they step into the light, their stride is neither boastful nor burdened by ego. It carries the quiet authority of one who has been tested and found unwavering. They recall the nights when tears of doubt clouded their vision, and the days when the weight of expectation threatened to crush their spirit. Yet each trial became a lesson in resilience, each silent tear a prayer that shaped their character. Now, crowned with the wisdom of survival, they stand poised to reign, not for personal glory, but to serve a higher purpose. This is their coronation, anointing them as leaders whose first duty is to the healing of others. They remember the sting of rejection when they dared to speak truth in rooms unprepared for their voice. Moments when their words were met with scorn, when allies turned away, and when their vision seemed destined for the waste bin of forgotten dreams. They have contended with the loneliness of leadership in its purest form, carrying burdens that no one else could shoulder. In crowded gatherings they felt unseen. In hallowed halls they felt unheard. Each closed door and cold shoulder left them wrestling with questions of worthiness. Am I cut out for this crown? Yet it was precisely in those silent arenas of doubt that their capacity to lead was deepened. They emerged from each encounter not defeated, but refined, their spirit tempered like steel in the fires of purpose. Then, like dawn breaking over the horizon, they encountered the promise that their elevation served a purpose far greater than themselves. In the often overlooked whisper of Jeremiah 30 verse 19, out of them shall come songs of thanksgiving and the voice of those who celebrate. I will multiply them and they shall not be few. They discovered that their rise was meant to spark a chorus of healing and celebration. They realized that every step toward the throne was a step toward unlocking joy in hearts long shackled by despair. Their leadership, forged in sacrifice, became the pathway for others to experience freedom and restoration. In that moment, their kingship transformed from personal ambition into a divine mandate to liberate. As they embraced this revelation, signs of transformation echoed through their world. Invitations arrived to mentor those wrestling with their own doubts. Platforms opened where they could speak life into barren dreams. Equally telling were the subtle shifts in relationships. They found former skeptics gravitating back, drawn by authenticity and the promise of renewal. Projects they had abandoned as too risky now pulsated with divine momentum, aligning with partners and resources in uncanny synchrony. Even their inner dialogue changed. The voice that once whispered, "You're not ready," grew silent, replaced by a firm declaration, "I am equipped for this season." These signs were not mere coincidences but confirmations that divine timing was orchestrating their ascent. Behind these outward manifestations, spiritual forces meticulously cleared the path for their coronation. They experienced unexpected breakthroughs, loans approved at the last minute, healing embraced in places long ailing, reconciliations woven into fractured families. In the lesser-known promise of Psalm 68 verse 19, "Blessed be the Lord, who daily bears us up. God is our salvation." They felt sustained by a power that carried them every step of the way. Angelic encounters and dreams imparted strategic insight. Prophetic words over the phone confirmed their next move. A nudge in a dream pointed them to an ally who would shift the balance in their favor. These divine alignments revealed that their rise was not an accident but a sacred choreography of grace. At this pivotal juncture, they must move beyond recognition of their calling to full embodiment of their royal identity. Fear of failure or unworthiness may still lurk, tempting them to shrink back into comfort. Yet genuine kingship demands the courage to declare, "I am anointed to lead, and I will lean fully into this role." In the clarion call of 2 Samuel 5 verse 2, "You shall shepherd my people Israel and shall be commander of Israel." They hear the echo of their own summons, to shepherd hearts, to guide with compassion, and to lead with righteous authority. This moment is the threshold where hesitation becomes action, where belief transforms into bold occupancy of the throne prepared for them. Now empowered by every sign and spiritual alignment, they can step into their role with intention. Release the final shreds of doubt with a declaration. "My reign is for restoration, and I will carry this mantle with service at its core." Anchor yourself in daily practices that reinforce this royal identity. Begin each morning with proclamations of victory for those you serve. Map out strategies for community impact, and surround yourself with a council of trusted allies who sharpen your vision and stand with you in accountability. In doing so, every decision, every word, and every gesture becomes an act of coronation, reinforcing the truth that you reign not in isolation, but as part of a kingdom that thrives on collective flourishing. Comment King if you feel the mantle settling upon your shoulders and are ready to lead with the authority born of suffering and seasoned by grace. Your rise is not an accident. It is the fulfillment of promises whispered over you long ago. Go forth now, crowned one, and let your reign usher in an era of healing, freedom, and divine glory. The legacy of the chosen. They have reached a mountaintop and turned to see not just the path they climbed, but the valley they once walked and the future that stretches beyond their own horizon. When they pause in quiet reflection, they sense the footprints of ancestors guiding their ascent and the silhouettes of descendants waiting to follow. This moment, heavy with purpose, reminds them that they do not wear their crown merely for personal triumph, but to ignite a blaze that will warm generations. In the seldom quoted promise of Psalm 102 verse 18, "Let this be recorded for a generation to come, so that a people yet to be created may praise the Lord." They understand that every tear shed, every fear conquered, and every victory claimed becomes part of a living archive, one that will fuel hope long after they have gone. They remember the weight of their early struggles, the nights when loneliness pressed against their chest like a stone, and the days when defeat whispered that their efforts were in vain. In those moments, the thought of legacy felt impossibly distant, a notion reserved for monarchs and mighty men of old. They questioned whether their sacrifices would matter beyond the fleeting applause of strangers or the passing smile of a grateful friend. Yet it was precisely in their suffering that the first seeds of generational blessing took root. For every act of faith in darkness planted fruit that would one day nourish the souls of those who came after. Then came the turning point, when they grasped that their pain held a purpose beyond immediate relief, that their testimony would one day become a lighthouse for those lost in storms. In the oft-overlooked declaration of Joel 2 verse 28, "And it shall come to pass afterward, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh," they glimpsed a divine blueprint for legacy. They realized they were part of a grand relay, where each runner passes the baton of faith into the hands of the next generation. Their healing was not just for themselves. It was a reservoir from which countless lives would draw courage. As this revelation settled into their bones, they began to notice signs that their legacy was already unfolding. Conversations with young people revealed wisdom echoing centuries-old truths. Family gatherings turned from routine to revival as stories of perseverance and redemption passed from grandparent to grandchild. Community events once led by others now featured their voice as a source of inspiration, sparking movements of compassion and justice. Even in casual encounters, a teacher encouraged by progress made in the classroom, a neighbor uplifted by a timely word, they saw the spark of their journey igniting fresh courage. These shifts were no accident, but the ripples of a stone thrown into the pond of time. Behind these outward manifestations, unseen hands orchestrated every detail to reinforce their emerging legacy. Synchronicities aligned opportunities. A book they penned found its way into the hands of future leaders. A workshop they hosted sowed seeds of innovation in fields they would never enter. In the lesser-known assurance of 2 Timothy 2 verse 2, "What you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses entrust to faithful men, who will be able to teach others also," they felt the power of multiplication. Every lesson they imparted was being replicated in the hearts of those chosen to carry the message forward. This divine choreography confirmed that their life was part of an eternal covenant. At this moment of recognition, they must move from awareness to full embrace of their role as architects of legacy. Some resist here, fearing the enormity of responsibility or doubting their capacity to inspire beyond their own time. They wonder, what if my story fades into obscurity? Yet true alignment demands a bold declaration. My life is a living testament, and I will steward every testimony with intentionality. In the clarion call of Proverbs 13 verse 22, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." They hear the mandate to invest not just in present comfort, but in the spiritual enrichment of generations yet unborn. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment "I am chosen" to let this message anchor in your soul. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Thank you to all supporting members for standing in faith with us. For full prophetic revelations daily, join the membership via the link in the description. Your spiritual path deserves more than fragments. Step into the full light. And if this message moved you deeply, consider tapping the Super Thanks button to support the mission. Every Super Thanks fuels the light we're spreading together. Rise, chosen one, your crown awaits.